Now, welcome to World Chef Podcast. I'm your host, Ragnar, and you're listening to World on a Plate. I've got a very special guest with me today, Christine Tobin, a culinary creative working in film, television, and editorial, dedicated to bringing stories to life through food. With over 30 years of experience, Christine is the creative mind behind a lot of food scenes in some of our favorite films and TV series, including Julia on Max, the story of Julia Child. Another example, Don't Look Up, The Holdovers, Challengers, Little Women, many others. And her latest project, Tony, was filmed over the summer. And Tony is the upcoming biopic capturing the early life of the legendary chef and writer Anthony Bourdain. So as a food stylist, Christine is responsible for sourcing ingredients, cooking, logistics, and creating beautiful presentations of food that read on the camera and add to the storytelling of scenes. So she collaborates closely with the production, writing teams, and in each project, like in the series of Julia Child, this was essential part of the storytelling. So great pleasure to have you, Christine. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a thrill, and I love talking about the craft of food on camera.
Yeah, what an unusual path from cooking to being within all the camera and the cinema, and must be really exciting. And tell us more about maybe your role in and what the food styling is, and how you get into the food journey or the food styling journey.
Yeah, with pleasure. So, well, first off, I'm not a trained culinary um, expert. I did not go to culinary school. I went to art school. So, as a fine artist, I worked in restaurants for, you know, many years before even being introduced to the idea of what food styling is. And I grew up with all the big magazines, Bon Appetit, Gourmet. My mom was an incredible cook, and my nana who lived with us from Sicily, she was an incredible cook also. So I just gravitated towards this craft while working in front of the house in restaurants. I wasn't back of the house, so I wasn't a chef, but I was brought on by Chef Anna Sortun from Oleana Restaurant in Cambridge to assist her with her work on her cookbook Spice. And that's how I entered food styling. And it evolved into assisting many food stylists in New York and here in Boston for editorial advertising purposes. And then it wasn't until 15 years ago. So was doing that for many years, and then 15 years ago started, or a little bit more, on motion work, and that started just based on a referral. And since then, I'm the only person in our New England local that holds the craft of food stylist. So, it's a fun, interesting journey to get to this point. And I surely was not ever thinking that I would have had the opportunities to tell these stories as robust and large scale as they have been. So food styling, from editorial, how I work is as if, I was a caterer or a private chef. Food for camera for me is brought with as much care and thoughtfulness as I would for anybody that would be in my home, for example, or if I had owned a restaurant, for example. So I think, and I use real food. I do not make molds. I would if I was asked, but I'm typically just asked to make really beautiful foods for camera based on the story, the script, have creative freedom to work with the director and actors, especially those who might be working hands-on in action, in moments of presentation or preparation, to sort of add breath, or more realistically, how food is actually prepared by a culinarian, because there are many actors that might not know how to butcher chicken, for example.
Right.
So the role is a bit, it can shrink and swell depending on the scene and the task.
Mhm. So you started with, there was photography, food
Yes.
styling for photography, and then transferred into the motion cinema. Is that very different? Is it very different? I mean, well, what would be the difference? I can imagine it's very different. Yes. What would be the difference in the
Well,
approach?
and yeah, it's different. Well, I'll say what I enjoy most about both practices is, I hurdle both. So if I'm not on a film, I'm working in editorial. And so it's very stationary work and very focused. And you're looking at just the frame. Um, and when I then hop on motion, it's like my world it opens up, and my responsibility is not just for what is in the frame, but allowing, like a set dresser, allowing the space that the actors are entering into and performing on feel as lived in and appropriate as the space would be. Like if you just had one cake here, but they're working in a bakery and there's not someone over there, whipping eggs or cream and someone there sifting flour, it wouldn't make sense to the scene. So I'm far more, I have far more responsibilities
Yeah.
um, when I'm in motion because I'm working outside of what is typically a camera, an image.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, and so during the filming during the filming, your responsibilities for the food is everything from the sourcing of the food, how to present it. Can you walk us a little bit through how does that work? What the process is with working with the actors and the directors and what have you?
Yeah, so it starts with always the written word. So similar to like working off a recipe. So it's about, reading the script scene by scene and pulling those food scenes and designing. Like I'm a visual thinker, so and worker, so I pull and grab examples of things online that would help illustrate to the director what those foods look like. There's many directors that aren't food savvy and
Right.
don't know the difference between a New York sirloin and a skirt steak. So it's like I first like lead by visual present representation and presentation. Um, and then I just chip away, once that is all solidified and confirmed with the director and all the prop master who I work really closely with, um, and set decorating team, then I work similar to say like a chef in a restaurant. Then I work with the culinary team
Mm.
that come with me, and we just go into almost like a catering sensibility where we do, I do the menu breakdown, ingredient breakdown, and we source ingredients. We empty out my shed of restaurant equipment and folding tables, and we load in out of our cars. It's kind of like camping, really,
Yeah.
um, and cook on sets. And sometimes there's an adequate kitchen facility that we're working in with running water. And sometimes we're working in a garage, down the street from the set, and food needs to travel in a van. So, I mean, it's very wacky, um, but it definitely leads to that hustle and adrenaline that happens when you're in a busy restaurant and you're working on the line, or you are in the weeds as a
Yeah.
waiter. It's like it's almost
Just
like a
in the
crazy.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to be, in my opinion, being trained for as long as I have been, just being a server and then growing into the culinary world and doing my own catering and my own personal chefing and really falling in love with food as an art form, replacing all the other training I have as an artist. It's like, but it's that undercurrent of adrenaline that only can be understood by people who've worked in restaurants, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Is that spur of the moment that
Foundation.
happens? Yeah, you need to be ready when you need to go when they say action. And that's I
Yeah,
guess it's similar
it's
to when
all,
food must run, cling, cling,
yes.
and the
It's
better
like being, it's
action,
food,
action.
it's being the expediter.
Yeah.
It's encapsulating all the things on motion when I'm on motion work as a busy restaurant, as chef, expediter, busser, dishwasher, all of it. It's when they start rolling, we're in full
Yeah.
motion.
Full restaurant mode. Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's talk about your maybe your best known food project, if I may say, the set of Julia, the series Julia. So as the food stylist for the HBO series Julia, well, you were creating the food for one of the most iconic figures in American culinary history. Let's tell us more about that. Maybe for our non-American listeners, can you tell us who was Julia Child?
Oh, well, Julia Child
You.
is an American woman who didn't start her career in food until she was 50. And it started with a passion project and hobby living in France and cooking for her husband and meeting a woman, Simone Beck, and developing what is one of the greatest cookbooks, the Mastering the Art of French cooking, and she has that on her resume, right, as being incredible, and the cookbook served to teach home cooks how to create beautiful French cuisine, and brought and I'm speaking for my own parents, like my dad was obsessed with her and my mom, who was Sicilian, but she enjoyed how much it presented to dinner guests and to family to pull out this cookbook and make something that was new to her. She's always done Mediterranean and Italian cooking, and here she is, making cream sauces and,
Yeah, yeah,
profiteroles, So Julia Child is that to us, but also she with public broadcasting here in Boston, she started the French Chef, which is the first cooking show.
show on the television. Yeah.
Yeah, the television show. So, she invented with all involved with, that programming,
Mm.
um, what has now grown into like a bazillion-dollar industry, which is
Yeah.
cooking for camera. So she's responsible for all of this and as a pioneer for women chefs and self-taught, you know,
Yeah. Mm.
culinarians. And, I grew up idolizing her, and it is quite bizarre when the call came in that
Yeah. How did you get involved in that project? How did that happen?
I had just Little Women had just been released, so that was in at Christmas time in December, and I think in February maybe I got the call to come in and meet for the pilot of Julia, and meet with who is the first director and the production designer, Patricia Van Brandenstein, who is an award-winning, like iconic production designer and art director and costume designer. She was responsible for Amadeus, Saturday Night Fever. So it was definitely a high pressure situation to walk in there. I always come with something delicious and sweet for people to eat. I think I made cream puffs when I first met everybody from Julia's cookbook. Um, and from there we started chipping away at a pilot, and then it got picked up, and then right before the day before our first scene of our first season is when the pandemic started. So we worked throughout this whole filming of 2 seasons of television, working under COVID. So it was, a very unusual for all of us, no matter what industry and what job
Yeah.
performances, but to have to work which with already like high risk variables in preparation and you know what the work
Yeah.
itself requires, then add on to it, COVID, working, especially on the culinary end, and we are very aware of food safety, and then you add on to that, all the other protocols. So, but we did it, and we had an incredible group of producers and
Yeah,
assistant
and
directors.
that show is really so much about, but not only the person Julia, but the food. It's all about food. So, working with your actors, did they have to have a specific training for of how to use utensils or what have you? Or
No, I mean Sarah. So Sarah Lancashire, who played Julia, she is a cook. I mean, she cooks for her family. She loves food. She really was very easily hands-on with, the tasks that she had for camera. There might be a couple, I think there were a few things, but that was more for me to understand because I understood what was happening with the camera and what they wanted to capture. So I would sort of coach her in that regard of how to do things so we can actually see what she was doing
Hmm,
type of thing in direction. But no, she was very natural, and we had great chemistry, and she was a delight to work with. And I had only seen her as Julia Child.
right,
Um, so it wasn't until we were shooting in France that I was at the hotel that we are all staying at, and I saw her as Sarah, as herself. And I approached her and I said, "Oh, I'm your biggest fan, Sarah Lancashire." And she's like, "What are you talking about, Christine?" I said, "This is the first time I'm seeing you as you. I've only seen her in costume." Um, so I always just, I don't know, treated her like she was Julia Child, but it was an incredible, um, it's sort of hard to wrap my head around, the role that I had in the culinary aspect to not only bring Julia Child's recipes to a story, but also be the invisible Julia to set the actor up to then be the face of it. So, yeah, it's definitely an experience that I treasure.
mm, mm. And so, working with the actual recipes from the books, how is that process? Like, do you need to adapt them for the filming in any way, or does it just happen very sort of like roll the camera and so you're off you go?
Yeah, so what the best the best thing that could have happened is convincing the producers to build a kitchen. And I had the help of the head of the construction crew, Paul Peabody, to help convince them that the food can't be coming off of a truck. It has to be made. And how I prefer preparing food for camera and working on film is it's a communal experience. So I'm there with my team of assistants and we're cooking together. And that's why the product reads the way it does, if that makes sense.
Mm, mm,
And so they built us a space that had all industrial equipment, a large walk-in space for refrigeration, freezer space. So I was not without to prepare any recipe as if it was on the side, interior of a restaurant, any restaurant. And so on the set, on the stage, we had three food heavy. So we had a restaurant, Henri, we had the WGBH space for a French chef, and then we had the child home. So we were centralized so we can just ping pong,
mm,
depending on where we
mm,
were spending our day, and working from that space, all the recipes, just because I just feel that I knew that every single thing would be under a microscope by culinarians and historians, that I was not going to mess around with recipes. So they are from the cookbooks, and period correct. And how I styled them was just based on, research on that that time of, 60s into the well, we didn't even hit the 70s at that point. We were in the 60s. And I got to cook not only from Julia Child's work, but also met her Jeffrey, Joyce Chen, when we met, there was a Chinese restaurant scene. So I did I did the same for all the chefs that I had to replicate, and that is to work from their artistry in their cookbook. So Lutèce, Le Grand Before, we shot there. So yeah, it really brought out, I love food, and it just brought out a deep desire to get it right.
Mm.
And, um, feed, the crew, and, having people be so delighted, just with the onset experience. That's my greatest takeaway
Yeah.
is joy, the, what joy the role of food has or had, especially in that show, on the crew.
Yeah, because I mean that's one thing. Like when you're of course when you're doing food for in a restaurant that is supposed to be then served to customers, you need to not only needs to look good but needs to taste good. So when
Mhm.
you're doing a food for just filming, would you go through all the efforts of making it taste delicious? Let's say if the actor needs to taste it, so would you go through that effort of making sure that well you season correctly or
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
mm,
no, it's so
can't
it's
fake it? Yeah, you can't fake
I
the
mean, I would never put something, and I'm an instinctual chef, like use that term loosely because I'm not a trained uh chef in quotation mark. It's like, but I'm a cook, and I want to make sure those that I prepare food for and serve are going to enjoy what I'm giving them. So we always ask, dietary restrictions. There might be some working within, say, like a tablescape of don't look up. That was, needing to make sure that everyone there didn't have any allergies or food aversions,
okay.
and always making sure that there are things that a greater obstacle for an actor is once you put something in your mouth, you have to do that take over and over and over.
Yes. Yeah, I know precisely. And I was going to say, so yeah, there must be like retakes like you see, I would see on television about television making, TV making, is that there are takes and retakes and retakes. And so it must be like going through the process again and again and again. And all that food, then I guess the crew enjoys it or wouldn't
Well,
get.
the actors, I mean, the actors will eat, they're at this, they're expected. I shouldn't say I don't want to use it. Yeah, they're told that there's going to be food. They know that they're showing up for a food scene. They typically, especially once they know me and they know the, it's a lot of trust goes into it, and they understand that this is a real food, beautiful food, and fresh. And, they'll come not having eaten that day and knowing that they're going to be eating for the next, 6 hours or whatever. Um, and, and then we move on. But, David Hyde Pierce, who played Paul Child in Julia, we were at the Joyce Chen restaurant scene, and he wanted the wonton soup, and we had made fresh wontons, and we made, I don't know how, like over 100 of them, thinking, oh, no one, it's just there as, we'll see. And he ate close to 50 wontons, and he, and he just like came up to us
Yeah,
after, like, patting himself,
tough job.
with
Somebody has to do it. Yeah.
he was so proud of himself, so it's, so that's what we come with. But as far as the, having the ability to, with refrigeration especially, and keeping things food safe, it allows me to share it after we are wrapped with the crew. We always come with, you know, uh, recycling, to-go boxes and things like that. And we package things up. On Julia, we had a separate, out because, again, because of COVID and having shared space, separate refrigeration, um, a refrigerator outside of our kitchen. So at the end of the day, crew members on their way out can just peek in and pull out,
Take away and enjoy the
yeah,
food.
just take away. Yeah.
Not waste it. Not go to waste.
So, just like anything in life, when you have food involved, it just brings together community, right? So it's like to have that ability to share it just brought just another element of this like family and close knit work. So it was nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can hear that. Like, there's a lot of preparation that goes into all this. And I guess Julia was special because it's really about food. But like in other projects that are films that we know, but that necessarily don't turn around food, there must be a lot of planning that goes into. How much planning will go into a one episode of Julia, or just one scene in a film where food is being served and eaten? What is behind the scene to get to that point? I mean, how much time and effort does it take to plan those?
Well, we always expect the unexpected. The legendary Susan Spungen told me that when I worked with her on this film Labor Day. So you could show up with all the food you want, but and all the planning that you think that is underway, but it just takes one person to change their mind, and the whole day, gets flipped up. So, but yeah, I mean, for Julia, we had these blocks of filming and then maybe a week of meetings and presentations of the food for each scene. And then again, just like a high, you know, functioning catering company would do, then we just go, we always get ahead, we prep ahead, we had the space and ability and other resources to just always think ahead, prep ahead, store safely, and then, pull back and start the work. So, but other things I did, consulting for a Anderson film where I just, pulled together menus and visuals and acted more as a consultant that, could just take a few hours, So it all depends on the scope, but most of the planning comes in those few days before scenes, working with locations and other departments to make sure that when we land, we can just start cooking right away. And I think people have become more accustomed to what the needs are for culinary teams to do their job. And it's about now, knowing, especially those who might, want to get into this wacky line of profession, but, it's about really advocating for the food, advocating for your team and knowing the questions to ask, like running water, electricity, things like that. So, that takes time too. So,
Yeah, yeah. So for the crew to understand, who are actually focused on filmmaking, might not necessarily understand what it takes to create a shot of a dish. So would it sometimes happen that you would maybe influence what sort of food according to like you see
yes.
script, and there's a certain setting or certain kitchen or certain ambience or certain season, or so how would that,
Oh yeah, no, I have if it's not, or some things are in the script that might not seem correct, then I gently, because you never want to tell a writer or a director that they're not right, because the idea is you're bringing what's in their minds and their imagination to life. But it's about sort of um, massaging the message in suggestion. And that's where, developing the menu and I use that with quotation marks, but developing the food program and presenting visuals is the best way to establish, a package of delivery. So that that's what you're making, that's what they'll be receiving, and the actors will either be interacting with or needing to, be in front of for hours. And yeah, and then, if there's a dinner X scene and it's springtime, I'll flesh out what I know is available here locally. One of my favorite days on the set of Julia, and we were filming we were there in France for 7 weeks, filming the French portion. And we're in the south of France and we're filming on an estate that had these beautiful like olive groves and almond groves and a garden. And so I built out this whole menu based on the cookbook, of course. And the homeowner invited me to pull from her garden. So everything that you see in this big feast that is the scene was all pulled from the land that we were shooting on, and it was like just delightful, and to have had that the freedom to do that and the trust of those that I was working for, and the directors and the writers were with us each day, then brought it was just really everything was just always special, and that's pretty unique because there are other days I show up on other jobs and I feel like chopped meat at the end of the day.
How come? How so?
Uh, yeah, but just it's hard, It's just like, working crazy long hours in the back of a busy kitchen. It's laborsome and a lot of training. I even train almost like an Olympian. I use that I'm being dramatic, but it's physical endurance. It's needing to make sure to keep working because it breaks down as just labor. My team, myself and my team are constantly in motion for, 12 to 14 hours a day. So it's not stationary work. And I think sometimes that's a bit of a misconception for people who think of filmmaking, like those of us, all, everyone. I mean, we're all essentially laborers. It's a lot of heavy lifting. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, so that's why I say chop meat.
I see. Is there like anything like that is fundamentally different in just plating a dish in a restaurant as compared to food styling or is it more or less just getting it right? If it's good enough for a customer, it should be good enough for the filming or the food styling
Yeah,
part.
I mean, I think what turned me on to even the concept is when I would watch Chef Anna Sortune and other chefs I work with, but her most notably, because I was with her for over 6 years, is um is that she would plate, like say the special, right? The special of the night, and she would plate it, and then she would replate it, right? So it goes up on the line, then she would replate it, and then over and over until she saw the plate as a canvas and the composition of how she wanted the food to be presented. And then like a machine, right? For each time the ticket would come, that same dish, like any line cook, right? Each dish replicates the last, right? And you're just like, it's the same dish over and over and over again throughout the night, or, and so stylistically. And so food styling is that's exactly what it is. And then on films, most definitely because of retakes or, that's the mentality and speed that happens when styling a plate. With food styling for still camera, there's a lot of, you have more time to interact with it, breathe in it. That's where tweezers could come in. I hate tweezers, but it's a big, utilized tool to achieve, perfection in some way, in some instances. But
Light and all that you have to put in. Yeah.
yeah, like it's just a different um, sense of almost accuracy, if that makes sense. Whereas I like the happy accidents that happen with food. And I find that to be the beautiful moments. And I approach that even in my still photography work. The less you touch food, the more beautiful it looks, in my opinion. So,
You have any
so
happy memories of accidents and that you want to
happy.
share?
Have
Happy
there been
accidents?
have there been happy accidents? Well, yeah. I mean, we've been. I mean, there's been accidents even you know, in translations, when we were in France and we ordered, we were at, I think we were supposed to be at Lieutenant, we were supposed to be somewhere with a duck, a pressed duck. And so we ordered the duck to prepare uh the whole duck, but we didn't know that it was going to arrive to us right before we had to start prepping with its neck, beak, feathers, legs. We had to break it down. I mean, that's when I lost it. That's when I had my assistant Rachel with me from here in the States, and she said she never heard that sort of noise coming from me as I picked up, the duck by the neck. So yeah, that was not a happy accident, but we made it work, and no one would know that story unless, I was to share it. So yes, definitely, it was definitely an adventure.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you very much for sharing all that, and it's a fascinating journey, and it's so closely linked to food, and with our members around the world, we know that being a chef can lead you to so many paths and ways. And what would you have any advice to give to chefs who would like to explore food styling? How do they?
Well, I mean, they are food stylists. Every chef that presents food on a plate is a food stylist. I mean, it's a big part of the training that chefs are underway in culinary schools and practices. Um, I think my advice, if those who wanted to really pursue the craft, is assist as many food stylists as you possibly can. Just reach out, even cold call. I mean, I only hire those who work in restaurants. I don't hire food stylists. I don't hire people who want to be food stylists because it's
Right, it's
what
the
and
mindset of
how,
every day.
yeah, I mean, how I approach food or how I approach what I do is as an artist first, but and a culinarian second, but I think all culinarians are artists, like instinctually. So it's like it's just food is a vehicle of art making. And I think when chefs can sort of twist that in their head a little, and pursue, look at art, look at paintings, look at, contemporary work, look at, try to get off your phone a little bit, and
Get inspirations from wherever they might be.
yeah, fine. And, I think, another thing is, 98% of the job on set are people skills and how you interact similar to in the kitchen. You need to be able to work together and work with others. And that's a big part of the job also that a lot of people don't necessarily understand, in the manner and in the patience that
Yeah.
and control. You can't be the chef on a set throwing a plate against the wall. That's not going to happen. So it's about control. But I would say reach out to assist food stylists if those who might know people in the film world, the person to contact is a prop master. That's who typically hires food stylists because food on camera is under the craft of property. So call your local business manager for film and introduce yourself. Always bring a sweet treat if you should meet anybody that would want to hire you as an assistant or as a food stylist. Um, yeah, it's because it goes those little pleasantries like leave lasting impressions, and um what else? I think, and use your phone. Like if you're wanting to build a portfolio of some sort, or, not look at it just as a tool for influencing, it's still a grid. It's still like a portfolio that, taking still photos from your phone is a calling card also, because when people are hiring, they will look at your Instagram and get a sense as to, it's like a dating app, when you're hiring, you want to see,
What they've done before, and
yeah,
yeah.
you want to see them smiling. You want to see people, and smiling through their food and seeing passion and skill sets, just from the vision, of it. So I think that's kind of, I think that's it. I think that's it. You're hired.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Christine. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing all these moments. And I can tell you, we're all looking forward to see Tony. Anthony Bourdain was a very special person, and we're looking. I think all our community of chefs are looking forward to see his work and your work on those series.
Me too. Me too. No, that was a special. It was a fast filming. Again, to get that call was, another, um, person for me in my life who opened me, when I was younger into what is food writing. I never even understood it as another sort of, writing method where you're talking about the innards of kitchen work. That he blew our minds with Kitchen Confidential, and inspired so many other people to write about their experiences in
Yeah.
food. So, I'm definitely grateful for all these opportunities. And I'm looking forward to seeing um, this work about a very special person.
Well, us too. Thank you very much, Christine. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yay.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. You're listening to World on a Plate, talking to Christine, food styling. Amazing story. I hope you enjoyed it. You're listening to World on a Plate. I'm your host, Ragnar Fredriksson. You take care. Until next time, bye bye.